Hi, I'm Edwin Samuelson, and welcome to another edition of the CineFiles. I want to introduce our scab Steve here, Eric Cohen. Thank you for joining us today. Steve could not join us, so Mike invited our friend Eric to fill in for him. So Eric, say hello to our fine audience.
I'm honored to be here.
Audience of 3.
And
As always, I'm Jeff Galashaw. Hi, everybody.
Mike Foltz, it's a pleasure that you're here with us this evening on a Friday night, 9:30. And I just want to ask, what the hell are you doing at home watching TV, for God's sakes? Get the hell out of your house and go live life. There's plenty of time for living life.
yeah, there is a lot of time. But let's begin with talking about our topics for those who are tuning in. Today our topic is Peter Jackson. Peter Jackson came back this year after a couple-year layoff with his Oscar-winning film where he won Best Director, finally. King Kong.
He won for Return of the King.
Well, I know he's back this year with King Kong, but he won for Return of the King.
Technically not this year, and technically not with that button.
Yeah, I don't know.
Last year. It was last year he came. Because we're in 2006.
Yeah, time goes
Happy
fast.
New Year, bloke.
Happy New Year. Well, anyway, let's start from where he began with Bad Taste, which is Peter Jackson's debut film, which was filmed on weekends over a period of 4 years. Got on the video market, became a cult classic, and I'm happy to say I saw that film in 1988.
And none of us three have seen it either, so
None of
that's
us
going to be
have
one
seen
we're
it.
not really going to talk about.
And you're Peter Jackson is like your favorite director. is he
It's
not?
the only film I haven't seen of his,
Okay, well.
to be fair.
Okay, to be fair. Well, let's start off on the one that
I've seen scenes from it.
Well,
I've
that's
seen
better
the
than you
box.
guys.
I've read about
The
it.
scenes made it look very good.
Well, the thing about this film is it was his training ground, and he used a lot of the techniques that he used in later films. Where did you know he designed all the makeup himself in his parents' kitchen?
I did hear about that, yeah.
It's pretty impressive to see that this man is that talented. I mean, everything that was created in that movie was created in his parents' kitchen. I mean, in a pan. He said he took his mom's, baking pans and made all these masks.
Well, that's going to be something we're going to have to watch for when all three of us see it.
I promise you, these guys will see it and we'll talk about it. But let's go to the film that I guess will be the first one of his films one that he made that you guys saw, which would be Meet the Feebles.
Very strange.
Yes,
Very
good.
strange.
I loved it.
I loved it too. In fact, Meet the Feebles was made in 1989, but did not get released in America until 1996 because of his success, thankfully, with Heavenly Creatures. I'm happy enough to have seen it in a theater with an audience. And let me tell you something, that movie plays great with an audience. It is a definite cult movie. Just to recap, it's a movie, basically, I guess you could say it's a twisted version of The Muppet Show. There's no
That's
human
how it
being.
starts out. When you
Exactly.
see this film, the first thing you think of, oh, this is The Muppet Show. And then things really, really get strange. I mean, there's so many scenes you can talk about. When you see like a Muppet rat who sounds like Peter Lorre. By the way, they have these different Muppets. There's an alligator junkie in there who has Vietnam vet flashbacks, who's shooting heroin.
With a needle bigger than his arm.
And he sounds exactly like Reverend Jim from Taxi, the Christopher Lloyd, doing this voice, it sounds like this. And then you got the rat that sounds like Peter Lorre, and then you have these puppets having behind-the-scenes S&M sex for snuff film type budgets, and then you have this fly that's a media reporter, and you get introduced to the fly as he's eating shit out of the toilet. I mean, it's completely ridiculous, so over the top. It's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. But go ahead.
We had this discussion earlier. It's not a very funny film, but it's so compelling.
It's
just
outrageous.
Yes.
Jeff, how would you see this?
I see it as an extreme dark comedy and satire of Hollywood and behind the scenes on shows. I mean, when I saw it, I was shocked by it. I found it funny, but I like darkly comic films in the first place, so that is how I saw the film. And I really just loved it because I liked where his head was at during the making of the film, and I just started thinking, if he can make this, I will pretty much go see anything he makes because I love this film so much.
I'd love to know what his budget was on that, because he did so much with absolutely nothing.
I believe it was under $1 million, and in fact, I believe he basically financed it himself, and then he got some money from the New Zealand Film Commission and finished it. And he got into a lot of controversy because the New Zealand Film Commission goes, "We finance this," and I have to say, I mean, it's not a movie for all taste. I mean,
No,
if,
it isn't.
if you want to start out with Peter Jackson, that's not the movie to start out with.
Exactly.
You could argue that maybe Meet the Feebles should also be known as Meet the Feebles Bad Taste 2, you know?
Yeah, except this time with just puppets, and Peter Jackson this time he's a puppeteer, and he's actually the voice of a few of the puppets actually.
Right.
And it has it's a musical too. In addition to being a dark satire, I mean, there's a musical number about sodomy.
Well, yeah, that's when the gay fox at the end does the whole sodomy. I mean, the first song that we get acquainted is I think mule that's playing the piano talking about his
Meet
missing
the
leg.
Feebles.
No, talking about his missing leg. That's my leg is missing, my leg is missing. That's the whole song.
You are so selling this movie to your audience.
I know.
It's a keeper.
Yes.
It's a keeper. Go see it.
It's worth watching. Let's put it. The DVD's terrible. There's nothing there. It's just to start them up. And my guess is maybe Peter Jackson's going to find time and re-release it with some extras or something. But as of yet, it's just a DVD. You put it in, it starts, and that's it. There's no menus or anything.
It's definitely a movie that you will play with a whole bunch of friends at a party. It's a cult movie. I mean, have a good time with it. It's a party movie. Basically, I guess you guys could agree with me on that one, couldn't you?
Yes.
Well, let's go to his next film, which is a film that I gotta say is one. I saw the preview for this, and I was like, I don't want to see this. But then when I saw that it got an NC-17 rating, I said, I am so there. The film was released in America as Dead Alive, but it was known in New Zealand as Brain Dead. Basically, I guess you could say it's Peter Jackson's Evil Dead 2.
Pretty much, I would agree with you there. But I love it because it is so demented. Soon out of the gate, the movie was great. But then, where it really sells me is, it's not really a spoiler scene, but when you have the priest doing kung fu against the zombies, that's when I was like, this is one of the greatest films I have ever seen at that time. Because I remember when I first heard it, I didn't want to hear it because I really didn't want to see a gory movie. But I took a chance on it, and just from the beginning, I did not know where it was going to go ever, and it kept surprising me, and it was just so good. And it is I will go on record as saying it is my favorite Peter Jackson film.
Hey, it's not a bad one. Don't be embarrassed by it. It's a good one. I mean, hell, it's NC-17. There's no nudity. There's no profanity. It is just gore.
Gore and comedy.
The gore's not that even bad.
It's like
it's over the top.
It's even more over top than Evil Dead 2. But I was just reminiscing about the film, since this was going to be a topic discussion, but it's an incredibly ambitious film for its budget. If you think about, there's all the gore effects, but the whole thing with, I know I'm giving something away, spoiler alert, but the mother at the very end, how she becomes this huge monster, and
love that.
With giant wart.
Yeah, and I loved watching the big fat guy just come out of nowhere with the hatchets, and they had that shot of following down the tracking shot with him just chopping up. They just chop him with the hatchet. It's a great scene.
Looks like he's cooking barbecue or something.
Great characters.
And I love too. I mean, not only is it very elaborate, all these zombies at the end. I don't know how he could pull this off on such a low budget, but it's also a period piece.
Yeah.
And a love story.
And a love story. It takes place in the 50s. And I can't believe that he got so much on screen. It just goes to show you his talents of getting every dollar on screen.
No, but you know what talent is? Talent is being able to do Dead Alive and then going from that to his next film.
Well, hell, he did, and he made
Heavenly
a big
Creatures.
one.
Heavenly Creatures.
Yeah, Heavenly Creatures.
Anybody that has seen Heavenly Creatures, if you as a movie fan, if you've seen Dead Alive and then look at Heavenly Creatures and try and make the connection to see what is in common with it, and then find out it's the same filmmaker, you will be stunned, because Heavenly Creatures is this poetic film with this acting that introduces us to the wonderful Kate Winslet, and really you see, Peter Jackson is this demented genius, but he also has the soul of a poet, with this performance.
Who was the mystery novel? Was it Anne Rule? That was the mystery
Anne Rule. That's supposedly who it was based on.
Right.
The mystery
and she actually came out and admitted it was her afterwards.
Right.
She was writing under a pseudonym for many years, but the film, like you said, it's completely different from anything he ever did. It's like going into just a complete 180. It's a very serious movie that is horror, yes, but it's real life horror of these girls who become obsessed with each other and will do anything to keep the relationship together. And I want to give credit to, you mentioned Kate Winslet. I want to mention, I forgot the other actress's name, but I thought
Melanie
she was,
Linsky.
Thank you. She was just as good, if not better. And unfortunately, she's not the the knockout stunner that Kate Winslet is.
Actually, she's quite grown into herself, because I've seen some other roles that she's been in, and she's slimmed down, and she's actually a very attractive young lady. She's
What other projects has she been in, Michael?
well, there we go. That's for the notes for later on. But anyway, that's beside the point. It's just gonna.
doesn't
Those
remember
are the
Coyote
films.
Ugly is one of the films she was in.
Yeah,
after
but
that.
she's actually much more attractive than the dowdy kind of chubby girl that we see her in.
Kate Winslet was my next door neighbor for a while.
She was.
Yes.
You're kidding.
No.
No, wow.
Seriously?
Small world.
Seriously.
And I think also of note is this is the first film in the Peter Jackson canon that his life mate Fran Walsh had an influence on. This is where you can see that she kind of puts her influence within the script. And she was actually she was the one that requested that Peter buy the rights to this story to make the film. So that's where we first saw
There
it.
is some interesting touches too with the, I guess you say that the fantasy-like sequences, very light fantasy, where
Yes,
they're
yes.
dreamlike sequences.
Those lifelike clay puppets.
Yes, and the scene where they think they're being chased by Orson Welles, I thought was very well done.
It's you're right. It has all these. I forgot about that scene. That was very like these weird like little moments, and it's just like you look at them and go, "Wow, this is something very unique and original."
And
the first time
somebody
in
with
a-
a good imagination.
It's the
Exactly
yeah,
working.
exactly, and this is the first time in a film I ever heard that characters making reference to Mario Callas, the opera singer.
Isn't it Maria?
Marie Callas.
Marie-
And
But-
Mario Lanza.
Mario Lanza, thank you.
I'm like, who are
yeah.
you
Well,
talking about?
that's Marie Callas's and Mario Lanza's son.
And I'm going to be so bold. I saw that movie in the theater just off of Dead Alive, and I thought it was even better than Pulp Fiction that year, which everybody was raving about. But nobody was really raving about this, and it only got one Oscar nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay.
Yeah.
And it lost. And I was just upset, highly upset about that. I think it's something, not to take anything away from Pulp Fiction, but if you sit there and watch Heavenly Creatures, even though it's based on a true story, you can tell that there's a filmmaker who's actually thinking and has a great imagination and doesn't have to rely so much on pop culture references to sell the rest of the film or the storyline.
Yeah, that's one thing else I want to mention too. The scene, which I don't want to give too much away, where there's a murder scene in the movie, is probably one of the most horrific scenes I've ever seen in a movie. To this day, it frightens me because of the way it's handled by Peter Jackson.
But that got him a lot of buzz. That film got him quite a bit of buzz.
Deservedly so.
But I think his
Exactly.
next film after that was a bit of a misstep.
Well, after Heavenly Creatures, of course, he got Hollywood came knocking, and then he got a chance to make a film for Hollywood in his native New Zealand with a big budget, and that film was The Frighteners, which I like quite a bit. Some people give it some flack. I think it's a very interesting film. I mean, I'm not gonna kid you. If Michael J. Fox wasn't in it, I would have probably liked it more.
I agree. I agree 100%.
Okay.
I don't think Michael J. Fox is bad, but I don't think he
Okay,
was right
as
for
long
that
as you're
film.
not, like,
There's something called
insulting
casting.
him.
You know, I mean, I thought they should. This is a man who had a very troubled life. You know, and he's supposed to be all scarred. You know, mentally.
You
And
probably
and
didn't
yet-
get the film made, though.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you put out,
But I
I
didn't think
admit,
he was that bad, and I didn't think he was necessarily bad. The criticism, I actually like The Frighteners.
I like it quite a bit myself.
I like.
I think it's a very creative movie, but it's. I mean, I'm kind of jumping ahead, but the same criticisms I have for Frighteners, I have for King Kong, where I think that it was a case where Peter Jackson was given too much at his disposal at that point, and tried to throw in so much into one film.
He was given carte blanche, basically saying,
Right.
do whatever you want to do. And actually, the DVD, which just got released, actually is 10 minutes longer, and it has a 4-hour making of documentary. And you can really see how intensive
Okay,
this movie was.
that's a little much.
Yeah, 4 hours
especially if
plus.
it's longer than the actual film
Especially
is.
when it's more than twice as long as the film.
Oh.
And
God.
he actually made that documentary himself. So, you know, but like you said, I think he was given a little too much control on that. But I still like the movie quite a bit. I like the way the way he seamlessly integrates the special effects with the characters. I don't ever like.
Isn't that the first real Weta film?
What's that?
Is that the first Weta film? That wasn't that the first time where he really put Weta together, and didn't that they
to do
created that
the
studio to do
Weta
Frighteners.
Digital.
You know, Weta
Oh,
the
yeah, I think
his
that's
special
the
effects
first
outfit.
film that he actually had where he actually really learned how to use special effects, and he did a damn good job because that helped him later with the Lord of the Rings films, of course, and King Kong, which we'll get into in a little while.
Well, sorry
ahead.
to cut
No,
you
go
off.
ahead,
go ahead.
Okay, with the Frighteners, the thing it's not a great film. It's very entertaining, but I know it has some kind of violence in it. But to me, it feels like a 1950s horror film because you have like the investigator who's way over the top in his performance.
Jeffrey Combs from Reanimator.
Yes, and I just
is
felt
great.
and the whole small town setting and everything. I just really felt like this was a period piece, even though obviously it's not supposed to be. And I like the little thrown in things like having Arlie Ermey's dead character from Full Metal Jacket come back, as one of the spirits that he talks to. And again. The reason I find it entertaining and I just find it interesting is because he had all this stuff to do, but he's using, again, you see him using his imagination. He's not just sitting there like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if I did this? Wouldn't it be cool if I did that? It's something where you could see that, he wants to play around and have fun.
Actually, he kind of is doing that. Wouldn't it be cool to do that? Wouldn't it be cool to have a disco dancing black guy as one of the ghosts and then the Civil War? Because he's taken all of his cool ideas. What he's not having is he's not having a ridiculous studio head nix all of his cool ideas that he's coming up with. And like you made the point with King Kong, maybe somebody should have stepped in. And I will be the first one to say, I will give the devil his due on this. At the time, next to Starship Troopers, it was probably the best, at the time, the best special effects I had ever seen in a movie. It was just seamless. It was amazing. It took my breath away. That ending with the explosion of the spirits and going down to hell or whatever it was unbelievable. But I will also say that Michael J. Fox, not a very good lead.
And I didn't like-
not very charismatic.
I didn't like the leading lady either, that Tranny Alvarado, I believe.
Alvarado.
Yeah, she's okay. I just think the problem is with the two leads. Everyone else, the supporting cast is awesome. You got, like I said, Arlie Ermey is the character. Chi McBride is the disco stud.
Peter
type character.
Dobson as her dead husband.
And Jeffrey Combs. I mean, when I saw that in the theater, people were going crazy for
I
him.
see. I wanted Jeffrey Combs should have been the lead, but you can't sell that to a studio to have Jeffrey Combs as your lead.
Yeah, and like you said, like you thought that he had too much control in that. He did. He filmed it all in New Zealand. Robert Zemeckis was the producer. And basically, he could do whatever he wanted to. And unfortunately, I think he just got a little carried away in some of it, And
Agreed.
It's an interesting film. It's definitely worth checking out. It's a lot like his other previous films, with the humor.
Right.
With I think like Dead Alive, but toned down quite a bit. Would you agree with me on that?
I would agree.
But with what he did with writing and creating characters and depth and everything, what he did with Heavenly Creatures, and what he did with special effects, and just the pure the making up of the worlds and stuff, it was clear that the studio, Bob Shaye especially at New Line, really had a great foresight, and Harvey Weinstein with Miramax had wonderful foresight to give this man the reins for the Lord of the Rings.
He did.
And he made movie history.
So we can say that The Frighteners was a very important film because it helped him get the Lord of the Rings saga, because it showed that he could use visual effects. And that's why it took 5 years for him to deliver his next film, which was the first Lord of the Rings films, The Fellowship of the Ring.
Which was a ballsy move by the studio to invest in a filmmaker that hadn't had a hit yet, and to do 3 films all at once.
Yeah,
Because
100 million
originally, way back when, John Boorman was supposed to do The Lord of the Rings as one film. Then Harvey Weinstein was convincing Disney to fund this, and Disney would only give him 2 films. So they would have had to eliminate the 2 towers.
What about the Beatles version?
And Bob Shaye would only, you might as well bring up Leonard Nimoy in the Song of Bilbo Baggins. You might as well throw that in there.
That was great.
But Bob Shaye looked at all the production that they had already sank money into from Miramax, and looked at what Peter Jackson did and said, I thought it was 3 films. And Peter Jackson was very confused, and he said, what? And he's like, I thought it was 3 films. Why did you make 2 films? Why don't you make 3 films? And thank you, Bob Shaye at New Line, for starting, basically giving Peter Jackson George Lucas's current mantle now as the greatest imagination in special effects films.
I think, and I have to give him more credit too, because one thing is amazing is that he shot scenes for like number 2 and 3 at the same time, and he was doing a certain scene. So like you'd have a scene at this castle, and they would film it at the exact same time. It's amazing he was able to make 3 coherent films. after all this. And this is a huge production.
Well, I think that's amazing about Peter Jackson, and is sort of repeating what we were saying before, where he's a great filmmaker as opposed to just a special effects, painter. Is the fact that any other filmmaker would make a movie like that. They would keep the camera stationary so they can get the matte shot in, and maybe there's a tracking shot where they can time it with. But Peter Jackson takes it to 11. No, there's got to be a shaky cam, and he's going to do like a whole helicopter, like aerial shot of everything going on while there's action happening in the background. That's the central action. It's just amazing that he would take it to that level.
That's like one of the only times I've ever looked at a film and I didn't look at it and just go, this is computer generation, computer animation. I really got into the movie and I was like, I accepted these were living creatures and this was real. And like you said, he had that great technology where he had each individual digital character doing a different action, in the background, these giant war scenes.
His integration with special effects special effects and independent camera techniques that we all learned in film school. Two scenes that come to my mind in Fellowship of the Ring. One, Peter Jackson on the commentary of the DVD says that he wants, on the Lord of the Rings film, he wants to get you like the Bond film get you, where the Bond film will show you like a 5-6 minute opening and he'll hook you like that, and he does in all three films. But in Fellowship of the Ring, he gets us from the beginning because he shows this fantastic battle sequence that happens at the foot of a volcano. And he has all these digital warriors. And it's unbelievable, the scope within the first few minutes that you see what we are going to be seeing later on. That was where he takes digital, and then he creates these wonderful monsters and stuff with both digital and makeup. And then the other scene, which I was saying that we brought back to with, the characters of in the Fellowship, when they're in the mines of Moria and the goblins burst through the door. It's all handheld. It's all shaky handheld because we want to feel the chaos within the battle. And he takes whatever he made us happy. I mean, you could make a case with The Lord of the Rings. It's a great monster film. It is a great love story. It's a great war film. The Lord of the Rings as a whole, it's
everything. Well, like I said, we don't have too much time because I want to get to King Kong. But what is your favorite of the entire trilogy, guys? I mean, what would be your favorite and your least favorites, and why? I'll start with you.
I don't really look. I mean, you're asking the wrong person. I look at it as one film.
You look at it as one film.
Yeah.
One film. What about you, Jeff?
I look at it as one film, but if I had to pick one that I guess since I saw them, in the theaters, but I don't own like the special edition DVDs, I would have to say I quite enjoyed The Two Towers. That was one that out of all three of them I enjoyed the most, and I really, was just amazed with what was happening.
Yeah, what about you, Mike?
Strangely enough, I think The Two Towers is the weakest one.
Really?
For me.
That's my favorite.
Because and not really because of anything, but I love The Fellowship of the Ring because I think The Fellowship of the Ring and The Return of the King, to me, the bookends are like tied for the best because I saw them both 4 times at the theater. But The Fellowship of the Ring has the Mines of Moria, which I think from the beginning when you enter the mine till they leave the mine is perfect filmmaking. Then Return of the King The Return of the King is almost a war film that is without compare. I think the battle scenes are amazing.
My favorite would be, of course, Two Towers. I think it has probably the most interesting CGI character ever, which is the tree, which I love. I love that character.
Tree bear.
I didn't care for Fellowship of the Ring as much, but I liked it. I just thought it took a little time to set up everything. It had to set up the whole saga, and that's why it was my weakest. But
I think we better get to King Kong.
let's get to King Kong, because we only have a few minutes left. But it took a while for Peter Jackson to come back, and he did with King Kong, which is probably the biggest budgeted film ever, and it got pretty mixed reviews. It got some amazing reviews, and then some people didn't care for it as much. It did okay. It just made back its money, but
state-wise, it made back its money. It's going to make a lot more worldwide.
What do you think of King Kong?
I liked it. My main complaint, and I'll leave it at this since I know we're short on time, but my main complaint is Adrian Brody as your hero. I thought Jack Black was going to be the big bummer, and he wasn't actually that bad. Naomi Watts got robbed. She should have been nominated for Best Actress because she was fantastic.
I agree.
Special effects were out of this world. But let me tell you something. Adrian Brody, who I normally like, wonderful in The Pianist, he was a terrible leading man. Not believable at all, and no chemistry with Naomi Watts whatsoever.
I will agree with you on Naomi Watts because people don't even realize
with everything
this.
You just said.
It's because basically she's acting with a blue screen, and I was convinced she was talking to Kong. My problems with Kong, I didn't think Brody was that bad. I just thought he was bland. Jack Black, to me was terrible. His transition from his character, you know, and then of course he gives probably the worst reading of a closing line I've ever heard in my life, you know.
Over theatrical.
Yeah, over theatrical. The film is, I believe, has many good parts. It's too long. It needed to be trimmed. I didn't like the native characters. I thought that was probably the weakest link in the film.
I
for
actually
me.
like that. I love the surreal cannibal things that he invented. I loved it.
The problems I have with King Kong are the same reasons why I admired it. In that I could see, you could see Peter Jackson was trying to make this great epic, I mean, almost like he was intentionally trying to make an Oscar movie instead of like a fantasy adventure kind of thing. And at the end of the day, you're like, well, basically it's a B-adventure film. And it kind of, while I admire that he tried to reach higher than that and have these wonderful, for example, he rushed into that romance between the two romantic leads way too soon and spent too much time on that. There was too much time on the boat trying to develop the characters. And then there was inconsistency in tones and style. All of them were great little mini sequences, but together they were jarring. Like, you know, the Kong Island sequence was great. Best part of the whole movie. However, he would have, you know, that whole sequence where they first arrive on the island and all the natives start attacking them. It's shot almost like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake with the sped up cinematography, everything. Then you have these other scenes that are like something out of a 1930s Technicolor movie, you know, like a musical.
I think the most clever thing he did in the film was making the actor within the film, the soap opera actor who the name escapes
very
me
good
now.
Kyle Segura.
Yes, make him into like a coward, and into a phony. I shouldn't say a coward. I should say a phony. That this guy's a leading man, and then he just wants to run away, and then really making him a leading man, and then turning him back into a heel. I thought that was the most
there was
clever
a lot
and
of
original
that, like sudden
things.
character changes. You know, suddenly the characters are good, and then suddenly they're selfish. And
but
didn't have
for
a
that
problem
character, I
didn't
just
have
thought
a
it was
problem
original.
with Black, actually. I had a problem with the way his character was conceived.
But you got to have a believable leading man. What made Lord of the Rings work is you believed in all the actors who were the heroes. Here, I just didn't believe in the hero.
Great characters and great actors playing these characters. King Kong, interesting film, but it's weak in my opinion.
Viggo Mortensen maybe should have played
Viggo Mortensen
Adrian Brody.
I agree. They needed an actor like Viggo Mortensen, a strong actor, and they didn't have that.
And
Kong
a strong
was the
presence.
strongest actor
And a
in the
strong
film.
presence.
I can see why Adrian Brody was casted, though, because it was that playwright element. He wanted someone that was like an Arthur Miller type.
He looks like it.
Unfortunately,
And
there was just no chemistry.
he was more like a sappy Barton Fink type.
True.
So, how does King Kong rate on your scale, Peter Jackson?
A mild thumbs up. I mean, it's very inspired, but I shouldn't say thumbs up. That's not our show. But I give it a mild recommendation. It's a spectacle that people should see. It's a popcorn
Is it a come
movie.
down to you from Lord of the Rings?
Oh God, yes. Oh God, they thought they were going to hit a big home run after Lord of the Rings, but I'm sorry, it was a letdown. Now they're going to do The Lovely Bones. That's next. He needs a small movie to do. That's it. But I would like to see him, just for record, I'd like to see him adapt Philip K. Dick's Man in the High Castle.
Anyway, thank you for tuning in. That was our show on Peter Jackson. And till next week.
Thank you, and thanks for
And thank you, our special
Aaron.
guest,
There
Eric.
we go. There
Thank
we
you.
go.
Until then, thank you.
Goodbye, Manuel. Goodbye.